Okay, let's do some Duolingo practice for the day. Matt lädt sein Handy nie auf und der Akku ist immer leer. Matt never charges his cell phone and the battery is always empty. Matt never charges his cell phone and the battery is always dead. What's the difference there? That means the same thing. Ich kann nur mit diesen Schuhen im Club tanzen. I can only dance with these shoes in the club. I can only dance at the club with these shoes, but that means the same thing. That means the same thing, little cat. Did you leave your wallet at the restaurant? Hast du deinen Geldbeutel im Restaurant gelassen? Hast du den Geldbeutel im Restaurant gelassen? But, I mean, that's not what you asked me. That's literally not what you asked me, Duo. Cat. Okay, here's an easy one. It's only 4 words. Das ist nicht notwendig. That isn't necessary. This is not necessary. This is not necessary. Oh, motherfucker! Let's talk about Duolingo. Whether you're just starting in your language learning efforts or whether you've been at this for a while, chances are excellent you've at least heard of it. It's one of the more better known language learning applications. But there's some pluses and minuses to it, so let's talk about them. Now before we start, I want to make it clear that this is not a paid endorsement. I don't work for Duolingo, I'm not affiliated with Duolingo, I don't get any money from Duolingo, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just a guy who's been using Duolingo for a while, and I have some things to say about it. Oh, so this guy's probably used it for like 2 weeks and now he thinks he knows enough to make a video about it, right? Nope. I've been on Duolingo literally every day for years. I maxed out the entire German tree back when gold was the highest level. Then when they introduced the new level, I went back and did it again, just for fun. At the end of last year, this is true, I got an email from Duolingo telling me that I was in the top 1% of Duolingo language learners worldwide, which seems unlikely to me. Maybe they tell that to everybody, I don't know. I don't bring any of this up for bragging purposes, because quite frankly, I don't think any of that is brag-worthy. I bring it up just to establish that, yes, I've been using Duolingo for a long time, and I know a thing or two about it. So let's get into it. Let's start with the positives. Things I like about Duolingo. Number 1, it's free. Yeah, I know, there's a paid subscription service, Duolingo Plus, you can subscribe to. I did that one year when they had it on sale. There's a few perks that you get with it, but in my opinion it wasn't worth the money, so I let it expire. But you can subscribe to it if you want to support the app and support the developers, but you don't have to. You can use Duolingo entirely for free, and it's quite capable even in the fully free version. Number 2, it's multi-platform. If you want to access it from a mobile device like your phone or your tablet, no problem. If you'd prefer to sit on your desktop or laptop computer and hit it through a web browser, hey, they've got you covered. The next advantage of Duolingo is that there are a ton of supported languages on Duolingo. They've got learning material for almost any language you can think of. So unless you're thinking about learning some really obscure language, chances are good you're going to find what you're looking for on Duolingo. Now, the quality of content varies from language to language. They have contributors that work on each language tree. I can only, from personal experience, speak about Duolingo French and Duolingo German, but I've heard positive things about Duolingo Spanish and some of the other languages that they support as well. Number 4, Duolingo has a report mechanism. If something goes wrong, and we'll talk about that in the next section, if something goes wrong, you can report it. And every once in a while, you get an email from Duolingo telling you, hey, we received your report and we agree, so your answer is now accepted and you've made the app a little bit better for everybody. That's a good feeling. And speaking of collaboration, that leads us to point 5, which is the strongest advantage of Duolingo, in my opinion, is the community. There's a community of people who use Duolingo and contribute to it. At the bottom of every sentence, there's a little discussion link, and you can click that to go into a discussion area about that sentence and its translation. And there are native speakers who hang out in the forums on their own time to help shed light on things that may not be clear. You can ask questions in there and get insight from people who know what they're talking about. And it's a great way to learn. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that I have learned probably about as much, if not more, from the comments section on each question than I have from the questions themselves, and that is saying something. It's a great community, and you can be part of that community. When you get to the point of experience in your target language where you can start answering some of these questions instead of just asking them, then you can hang out in these forums as well and help other people who might be stuck on some question that you know the answer to. And that's a great feeling. It's a way to give back to the community that has helped you as you were learning. Oh, hello, Calgary Tower. Now, unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and roses. There's some drawbacks, some disadvantages to Duolingo as well. Let's talk about that. Number one, the reporting mechanism. Yeah, I know. I listed that as a positive, but it's also a negative. Why? Well, Duolingo can sometimes take a little bit of time to respond to user reports. And I'm being a little bit sarcastic there because there are some cases where you'll go into the comment section for a question and you'll see that, this answer that Duolingo marks as rejected was reported by a user months ago, or in some cases even years ago, and they have not yet acted on those reports, which is kind of embarrassing for Duolingo. Now, I find this is a problem, especially in the newer sections of the German tree. The newer sections of the German tree added late in 2021, just a little while ago, they feel like they were rushed through testing, if they did any testing on them. Some of them are quite bad. Those examples that I did in the comedy bit at the beginning of this episode, every single one of those is real. And I could have made that comedy bit about 10 minutes long because I had a ton of examples to work with. So it's frustrating when you get rejected for a perfectly valid translation and you go into the comments section to talk about it and you find out that, oh yeah, somebody already mentioned this like 6 months ago and Duolingo still has not fixed it. That's kind of embarrassing. And it leads me to drawback number 2, which is the question design in Duolingo can be very frustrating. There's almost always more than one way to translate something, unless you're talking about a very simple sentence. There's almost always more than one option. But Duolingo, especially again in some of the newer sections of the German tree, the questions only have one very specific translation that they accept, and they mark everything else as wrong. And the frustrating part about that is that sometimes the translation that they accept is not the obvious one. Sometimes it's kind of wonky that they only accept a very specific way of saying that. For example, das ist nicht notwendig. Das in that sentence can either mean this or that, but the more natural translation, in my opinion, is that. That is not necessary. But Duolingo only accepts this is not necessary, even though either one should be acceptable there. Now, yes, you can mitigate this with the report mechanism that Duolingo has. And I did report every single one of those that I did in the comedy bit at the start of this video, and some of them have been addressed since then, but many of them have not. And it makes Duolingo sometimes a very frustrating experience. You have to memorize the one specific answer that Duolingo accepts for a given question, and then regurgitate that one answer back, and everything else is marked wrong. So it becomes less of a game of, hey, please translate this, and more of a game of, hey, can you guess what this question's author was thinking? And that's a much less fun game to play. Now, the final drawback of Duolingo that I will mention, and I've said this before in previous videos, but it bears repeating, is that Duolingo will not ever make you fluent in your target language. This is a common misconception among beginners, that if I just spend, a little bit of time on Duolingo every day for 6 months or whatever, then I'll be able to speak that language fluently. No, that's not going to happen. Now, this is not necessarily the fault of Duolingo. Duolingo is very good at what it does. It's a flashcard app. It's a very well-written flashcard app, but at the end of the day, a flashcard app alone is not going to make you fluent. Not in 100 years. You need to mix it up. I mentioned this in episode 1. I talked about it again in episode 14. I'll mention it again briefly. You need to mix it up. Different sources of language learning. Combine them together. Grammar textbooks. Listen to podcasts in your target language. As soon as you are able to hold even a halfway decent conversation, do that. Speaking to actual humans in an actual live conversation will help you learn the language and help you solidify what you've learned much, much more quickly than flashcard apps alone. Now, there's a few alternatives out there. There's quite a few language learning apps that are kind of similar to Duolingo. Let's talk about the alternatives. Number 1 on the list would be Memrise. Memrise is probably the closest in terms of functionality to Duolingo. I don't have recent experience with Memrise, but I did use it quite a bit a few years ago, and I quite liked it for French and also for German. The thing I liked about Memrise is that they had little short video clips of actual native speakers speaking the sentence questions to be translated, as opposed to Duolingo, which for a long time just used robot voices. Duolingo has now recently also switched to human voices, which is nice. Another alternative is Closemaster. It's got a bit of a wonky UI. It looks like an old school video game, but it's kind of fun. It's well laid out. It's got good content, at least for German. I can't speak for other languages. Another one that I found reasonably recently is called Speechling. This focuses more on getting you to speak your target language instead of just typing it, which is kind of cool. And you can get feedback from actual native speakers on how you're pronouncing, how your pronunciation is going. And then the last one that I'll mention here is the old standard workhorse flashcard app is Anki, one of the oldest flashcard apps that I know of that's still around. It's pretty basic. It doesn't have a lot in terms of features, but you can find Anki decks for pretty much any language you can think of. So if you just want a plain no-frills flashcard app, Anki is the one for you. Okay, so let's sum it up. Duolingo is a pretty competently written flashcard app with some pretty neat features to it and a very nice interface. It's aimed more at the beginner to intermediate crowd, so if you're looking for an additional language learning tool to add to your repertoire, or if you're just starting out, you're thinking about learning a language but you're not sure where to begin, Duolingo is a good way to ease into the process. It won't get you all the way there, but it'll get you to the advanced beginner stage or maybe even the low intermediate stage if you stick with it long enough. At some point though, you're going to have to mix it up and combine it with other sources of language learning. Whoa. But having said that, I like Duolingo, I've been using it for a long time, and I recommend it.
Breaking news.
Breaking news! Yes, it's been a couple of weeks since I wrote and scripted and filmed the episode that you just watched, and there has been some major developments on the Duolingo front. And since I hadn't released this video yet, I thought, okay, you know what, instead of reshooting it, I'm just going to film a new ending for it. So that's how the video originally ended, with a strong recommendation for you to use Duolingo if you were thinking about picking up a new language. Well, there's been some changes. It turns out Duolingo has closed their comment section. Now that was not news. I knew that even back then, because they announced it weeks or months in advance that they were going to close their general discussion section, not the sentence discussions, but the general discussion section where you could discuss anything. The sentence discussions originally were supposed to stay open, at least that's what I remember reading back then. But they closed everything. They closed the whole kit and caboodle. Now, you cannot discuss anything with anyone on Duolingo. Their reasoning for this was that they were getting a lot of scammers and spammers, people posting harmful links in the comment section, and they didn't want to hire a full-time team of moderators to keep everything under control. Okay, fair game, I guess. The internet is a pretty dangerous place, and there's a lot of people out there polluting the comment section with off-topic stuff or spam or whatever. So fine, I can understand why they would want to close their general discussion section. But the sentence-specific discussions, the link at the bottom of every question where you could go in and discuss with native speakers, those have also been closed. And there's no word from Duolingo that I've seen as to when or if they're going to be reopened. This, in my opinion, is devastating to Duolingo's usefulness. One of the strongest points that I mentioned in that video you just watched was that the community of Duolingo is what helps make that tool so effective and so useful, and they have destroyed that. I don't understand this, and it's really, really devastating, to the point where I'm honestly thinking maybe I'm done with Duolingo now. There's not much value in continuing to use it. It's become just another flashcard app, and there's a bunch of flashcard apps out there to choose from. There's Closemaster, there's Memrise, there's Speechling, there's others. If you know one that I haven't mentioned, please mention it in the comments below. I'd be happy to take a look at it. Duolingo has now just become another flashcard site, in my opinion. Yeah, they still have stories. Yeah, they still have their blog, but I mean, it's not the same if it's not interactive. If you can't talk with other language learners, the usefulness of that site has gone down dramatically. So I am changing my recommendation from a yay to a nay. I do this with a heavy heart because I really do like Duolingo, or I liked what Duolingo was. I don't like what it's become, and I think that its usefulness, unfortunately, has plummeted. So this is not how I originally planned on editing the video, but if you are thinking of getting into language learning, if you are thinking of picking up a new language, maybe look elsewhere. Duolingo is not what it used to be. And that makes me very, very sad.